In the UK and US alone, nearly half the average diet consists of ultra-processed foods, otherwise known as UPFs. But what actually is an ultra-processed food? They are foods with industrial formulations, composed with chemically modified ingredients. UPFs are often packed with additives to enhance the taste, texture, appearance and shelf life of foods, and they rarely look anything like whole foods. Unfortunately, whilst they may taste great, these foods contain substances that our bodies don't recognise, cannot process properly, and as a result, they are making us very ill. A recent review in the British Medical Journal showed that diets high in UPFs are directly associated with poor mental, respiratory, cardiovascular, gastrointestinal, and metabolic health, as well as increased cancer risk and mortality. In this podcast, I'm chatting to the brilliant chef and author Melissa Hemsley, whose new cookbook, Real Healthy, tackles the timely message of how to unprocess our diets. The book is crammed with advice and tips and hundreds of recipes for making healthy, delicious foods really easily. And we tackle the major changes we all need to make in the way we eat today. Welcome to Ways to Feel More Human. I'm Susanna Taylor, and today I'm thrilled to be joined by the best-selling author and chef, Melissa Hemsley. I'm lucky to have known Melissa for many years, and what I didn't know until I did a bit of research about her was that she began her career as a private chef for actors and bands, including Take That. Today, she has co-written and written 5 best-selling books, and she is a huge champion of the joy of eating healthy food and how to make healthy meals that you will genuinely look forward to eating. Her new book, Real Healthy, out now, tackles the incredibly important and timely message of how to unprocess our diets. And it also shows that making wholesome, delicious food really doesn't have to be hard. Personally, I think if Melissa's cooking had a personality, it would be pure sunshine. Melissa, welcome. I am thrilled to have you here.
I am thrilled to be here. Thank you. Can you hear and see my big old teeth? Just like very happy with that intro. And thank you for saying nice things. And we have known each other for yonks, haven't we? Yonks.
Yeah, we've known each other for ages, but don't get to see each other. I only get to see each other, people on this podcast, to be honest.
Yeah. And also your newsletter. I don't know if I'm the only person, but I do always like to reply back to you when you've sent a stonking good newsletter and say, thank you. Don't I? I'm like, I've just ordered what you recommended, or that's really lovely.
I know, you're
I
really
really appreciate your newsletter.
Thank you. But anyway, we're not here to talk about me. We're here to talk about you. You have a new book out called Real Healthy.
Yes.
I have to say, it's an absolute joy to read. It's going to live on my kitchen work surface, and I genuinely mean that. It's my kind of cooking. But before we get on to that, I wanted to talk to you quickly about how did you get into healthy cooking? Didn't your mum cook everything from scratch, and she was an amazing cook?
She did, and she is an amazing cook. And I bow down to her even more now because she's helping me with the joy of weaning my baby and all of that world of cooking.
Wow, lucky
so
you.
My mum is very much back in the kitchen again in my life. She did. She was a healthy cook, but breaking down the word healthy, I feel like you and I have always been aligned on what healthy is, and which is that healthy is different for everyone, and it's eating what makes you feel good, what does you good, and what fits your lifestyle. So of course, when you're a kid, you don't know that your mum's cooking you healthy food or what she's cooking you. It doesn't really have a name. It's just mum's food. And sometimes you like it and sometimes you don't. And she's from the Philippines. She grew up with a huge family. I think she's the second but last of 6. Well, they were 8 and then two passed in childbirth. And in Manila, in the capital city of the Philippines, with very little money. And she very much has brought that ethos into the way, even now, how she lives. It's like small amounts of meat and fish and loads of vegetables and a lot of soups and broths and a lot of kind of like what I call soupy food, which if you love soup, you're like, yeah, I know, I like that. And we soupy people know that soupy meals do not mean like blended cauliflower soup. It can be brothy, it can be laxers, it can be curries, it can be dals. Anyway, I would say bowl food. And it was very much food rolling from one meal into the next. So, bits of the chicken or the rice would be tomorrow's stir fry tomorrow's rice soup. And yeah, if I look at all my books, I can just see her running through them all. But that's not to say I didn't rebel. And I was thinking that every birthday time or Christmas, what I really wanted was my mum to buy a pack of, I don't want to say their name, the cereal brand that has like a little 12 pack of tiny little cereal boxes.
Yeah.
And that was all I wanted. I wanted the sugar and I wanted the toys and I wanted all the additives because it was what I wasn't allowed.
Did she let you have them?
No, she didn't. But obviously I had them when I went to my friends' houses.
Yeah.
But we definitely weren't allowed them. And maybe it backfired a little bit in some ways then, because of course it made me want them more. But then of course you eat them. And after a while you eat them a lot. Then you work out what makes you feel good. And I'm all for treats. And I think sometimes people think healthy eating means boring, you're going hungry because you're not satiating yourself and it's just boring and bland and you're preaching. And of course, because you know me, that's the opposite. I'm all about wholesomeness, abundance,
colour. I think of your food as very colourful.
Yeah.
I think of it, that whole thing of eating the rainbow, that is you.
Yeah, and I know that can feel so cringe saying eating the rainbow.
But it is you.
We're so busy. I'm at the shops or I'm online shopping and I think, okay, I don't know what to buy. Because even though, especially in my new book, I bang on about meal planning and meal prepping, and that is meal planning and meal prepping for people that think they don't like meal planning and meal prepping. If I really can't think of what I want, I just think buy the rainbow. So I just go through the vegetables and
That's
I think,
what I do.
Let's get something red. Exactly. So eat the rainbow, bit cringe, but it works.
Okay, so your mum was all about packing in as much like fresh produce as possible.
And fresh frozen cupboard, she didn't mind.
Yeah.
But as long as it had the base of whole foods, so like the grains, the legumes, being a Filipino background, rice is one of their major exports. So we had a lot of different rice meals. And yeah, broth, like, right now my house smells of chicken soup in a really lovely way because we've just got our weekly veg box. We order chicken carcasses. My sister used to make these bags that said boil your bones because it was really catchy.
Oh, yes, I remember.
Do you remember? You probably got one.
Yeah.
Every now and then I see someone on the tube with one. I'm like, oh my God, we only made about 200.
I don't think I got one, but I remember them.
Oh, Susanna, I'm going to make you one because they don't exist anymore. But it would say boil your bones. And of course, I don't mean boil the food, but it would be, this chicken is simmered slowly. We'd shred the meat. We'd use that stock for flavouring. So right now my baby will have a couple of spoonfuls. I'll drink a mug of it. I'll sometimes crack an egg in it. My boyfriend loves to crack an egg in it after the gym. Or we use it to make risottos or soups or sauces. Like obviously the best gravy ever with that. And that's the smell of my childhood, like just something simmering away and things just rolling in. And that's sort of how I think we can make food more convenient, because the whole thing about my book is, well, all my books really is, I read the intro to my first book the other day, and I've been saying the same thing for 15 years. We can seek out the path of least resistance to getting somewhere, but is it going to do us the best good in the long run? So my food's always back to basics, eat as close to nature as possible, while being realistic, making it work for you, not beating yourself up.
Now it feels like everyone's coming round to this way of thinking though, isn't it?
We've gone back again. We always just go back again, don't we? No matter how convenient we try to make our lives, then what comes back again is everybody wants to go offline in a hut and not take their phone, or they want somebody to ask them to lie down. And, Naheed, our love for Naheed knows no bounds.
Yeah.
I'm living in a city. I exist on screen, let's say, my laptop, my phone, my iPad, doing things. And all I want to do is go and lie down in a room and think about things that Naheed has taught me and breathe.
Yeah.
We do go back again.
So Naheed de Belgion I'm hoping to get her on the podcast. She's an amazing practitioner who basically deals with calming your nervous system. And I've just done an event with her and she's absolutely amazing, isn't she?
Well, just thinking about her is reminding me to take a deep breath. Yeah, we've gone back again. I've got my old school notebook. I know you have gone back to your illustrating roots and your art. Yeah.
I always have a note. I love a pencil.
Oh, do you go pencil?
I actually write things down in pencil.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah.
I bet the act of sharpening is quite meditative. I love
I also like the idea of being able to rub it out. Okay, so listen. So your new book, Real Healthy, it's all about fresh food and, great nutrition. But it's also got one very key message, and that is how to unprocess your diet. I think that's the tagline, isn't it? Which says, how to unprocess your diet, because we're living in a worrying time where ultra processed foods are making us pretty unwell, and we seem to be just carrying on eating them, even though we know it. And your book is like the antidote to that, really, isn't it?
Well, I hope it can play a part in that, for sure. I think that we keep eating them because they're everywhere. The other foods, the others, let's say the foods we used to eat, are not everywhere anymore. They've sort of been pushed out of the way. There's the price issue, the accessibility issue, the availability issue. And most of all, I think it's convenience. It is so easy to buy something like that we don't even need to heat up, or that someone else can deliver. I mean, I've got, I don't want to say their name, but I've got the big ordering app for transport, for taxis, for when I need to jump in one. And because I'm signed up to that app, I swear every day I get an email going, something eats. Why don't you have this delivered for your dinner tonight? Or why don't you order this in 2 seconds? And I'm like, I don't even use that part of the app. I'm just there to get a cab every now and then. And it comes at the most clever time, like 4:00, where I'm getting hungry and I'm thinking about what I want to eat. And someone's saying to me, you can have all of this delicious 5-star rated food at your door. And here's like a 15% promo code.
Yeah. And you don't have to lift a finger.
And you have to lift a finger. And it's irresistible. When I started writing the book Ultra Processed People had just come out, and people great book, and people were pretty shocked by it. I mean, I think even those of us that work in wellness / food / hospitality / education, who knew the basics, were also shocked, because it was a deep dive. And my book is not that. My book's a cookbook, but it's with the lens of the state of today's food environment, which is that in the UK, we have the really sad record for being the country in Europe that eats the most ultra-processed foods, also known as UPF. So people might have started saying that term.
It looks a bit like UFO, doesn't it? It might as well be UFO. They're like UFOs for our bodies, basically.
I saw an article once called WTF UPF, and I was like, yes, exactly.
They're unrecognisable flying objects for our bodies.
They are. They are. They're unrecognisable flying edible objects. Well, Chris Van Tulleken's book, Ultra Processed People, he has a scientist that says they may be edible, but they're not food. Well, I mean, I've sort of bastardized that line. But anyway, this book is not, my cookbook is in no way saying, it's no way telling you what to eat. It's not a diet book. It's, I kind of feel like I've got to get all the knots out the way. So it's not demonizing. It's not a diet book. It's not fear mongering. It is not a book specifically about ultra processed foods.
And you never claim to be a nutritionist, do you? So you're a chef, and I think you're on a mission to make life easier for us, really, aren't you?
I kind of want to help myself more than anyone. Like, I'm now a mum, and I roll my eyes and think all the times that I've brought out cookbooks before and gone, this is really easy. Like, you bet. I have always been busy, but now I'm busy, plus I've got a mouth to feed. So I'm really aware, and whether people have children or they're cooking for extra, anyone else in the family, I'm really aware how hard it is to, one, look after yourself. And then if you're the main person cooking or buying the food, really hard to get everyone else on board, because it's tough cooking a meal, working your bottom off to cook a meal, and then people don't want it, and they'd rather have the really super hyper palatable, delicious food that's wherever it's come from, that they want to eat that, and no one wants to eat your food. So I've tried my best to counteract that. In the UK, our average daily diet, we eat 56% of our calories UPF heavy, and then the under 14s, it's about 67%, and for some people it's 80% UPFs.
Wow, so that's big.
It's big. So, and it's rising. And ultra processed foods, it's a confusing-ish term, because ultra processed foods is coined by a bunch of scientists, amazing scientists, and they created it to classify foods and how they're processed. So it's a scientific term. What it basically is, in a nutshell, is food that is full of things that we don't necessarily need. Ingredients that are not necessarily nourishing us, and there's a time and a place for them. I have some in my cupboards. I will go out and eat them. But we used to cook without them. We used to eat without them. And so it's going back to how we used to eat. And for anyone that feels like the percentage of their plate is creeping up and up and up and up and up of ultra processed foods, and they want to bring it back down again, or they want to reverse it, reverse it, then I hope I've got these antidote recipes for you. And if you don't give a hoot about ultra processed foods and just want a great cookbook and you're a busy person, then I hope mine's good for you. There's been lots of recent studies, particularly the British Medical Journal, linking high volumes of ultra processed foods to serious mental and physical illnesses. So that's really scary. And I was reading up, because I do lots with School Food Matters and so on, as you mentioned. And, our kids, they're developing in every single way, including their taste buds. Their bodies are developing. It's really important, isn't it, for them to have a breadth of foods on their palates.
I also read another stat in your book which said that the amount of vegetables we were eating in 2022, I don't know about this year, apparently dropped by 14%.
Well, I find it amazing. You can't flick a channel. I mean, who flicks channels these days? But you can't go on and see the TV or any of your, channels that you subscribe to without seeing a cookery show. Whether it's a chop and chat or it's a competition style or a roving travel program. And we are obsessed with them, but we're not cooking.
Yeah.
Or if we're cooking, we're not cooking with vegetables or whole grains. And I feel like beans, which are quite, I love beans. They've had the most amazing year, have they not? Like, I feel like beans are everywhere. Or maybe in my echo chamber of social media. Did you watch the Blue Zone show?
Yeah. Yeah, there was a lot of beans in that.
A lot of beans.
Yeah.
A lot of beans. In a good
I think
way.
Also for gut health, there's been a big conversation about beans in gut health with lots of nutritionists.
Yeah. And what we should quickly say for background, if you haven't heard of the Blue Zones, it's where people, areas of the world, there's sort of 7 key areas where people are living to 100, like in great droves in villages and cities and towns. And people go and investigate and see what are they eating that's contributing.
It is fascinating.
Contributing to it. So there's a town in Italy and they eat lots of minestrone and soup and cucina povera, very little meat, lots of whole grains. And then there's lots of beans in a place and purple sweet potatoes in Japan.
Yes.
Yeah, and seaweed. All of these lovely foods. Even when I'm cooking and coming up with my recipe books, I have to check myself and go, Melissa, you've got about 50 sweet potato recipes in here. Or, all your recipes have got red pepper. And I have to challenge myself to go, right, let's pick another vegetable. Or maybe I will keep broccoli in my basket this week, but why don't I go crazy and add a cauliflower or whatever it is, changing it up, keeping things interesting, eating for plant diversity, eating for gut health. Can I say there's a great nutritional psychiatrist called Dr. Uma Naidu, and you know how we said when I'm shopping, I think eat the rainbow. She has something brilliant. I can take no credit. Can I quickly tell you? It's called Brain Foods. Yeah. So it's an acronym. So B is for beans, R is for rainbow of veg, A is for antioxidants, so like deep colours, your berries and so on. I includes protein, that one I always forget. N is for nuts and seeds, so that's brain. And then foods, F is for fermented foods, O is for omega-3s, the second O is for oils, D is for dairy, or if you don't eat dairy, the full fat equivalent. So like no skimmed, no light, no 0% fat free. Yeah. And the S is for spices.
Love
so that. Isn't she clever? She's amazing.
That's a proper upgrade of Eat the Rainbow.
Yes. And she and I are doing a live in August. She's Dr. Uma Naidu, Naidoo. We're doing a live in August. She is a trained chef, and she's a lecturer at Harvard, and she's just incredible. And she's so clever at coming up with these acronyms. So again, on your shopping list, if you've got notes on your phone with your shopping list, put brain foods at the top and try and, grab something from each of those sections. So, I mean, I like to think that I get it a bit more now, especially now that I'm a mum. I get, even when I was cooking as a private chef for bands, I cooked all day. I thought about food all day. I'm around food all day. And then I get home and I'm like, okay, what am I going to cook now? How am I going to look after myself right now?
Yeah.
So
what's in the damn fridge?
What's in the damn fridge? And I'll tell you what, before I often even look in the damn fridge, I'm looking in the freezer. Because as we know, the freezer is the time machine. If you've got the space in a freezer, use it wisely. So like maybe your vodka's in there, maybe your ice cream's in there, maybe you've got a lot of stuff you're never going to eat in there, a bit like your wardrobe. Maybe do a little edit and think, how can I make my freezer work to make my life better? So whether it's batch cooking, I've got this recipe, which maybe we can share it, Susanna, with your gang.
Yeah.
And it's a batch cooked super sauce, and it's red lentils and like tins of tomatoes and onions and garlic and whatnot, like a very small amount of ingredients. And the red lentils cook in 18 minutes. They melt into the sauce, so you can not even blend it. You could blend it if you wanted it silky smooth. And it becomes this absolutely delicious base sauce for soups, pastas, curries, dals.
Amazing. Protein
packed. And I make it really thick because, of course, the more liquid you've got, the more space you need in the freezer. I make it super thick. You can freeze it in big ice cube chunks or whatever. It's in the freezer, and you just don't have to chop. You don't have to smell. You don't have to do much. You can just throw it into something, toss it through some beans, crumble some feta on top. There's your dinner.
Oh, yeah. Is that in your book?
That sauce is in my book. Yeah. Soup
Awesome.
sauce.
So I feel that we have completely deviated from our path of how we're actually meant to eat, because all these ultra-processed foods are not really something that our bodies recognise, are they? What do you think about eating in more of a human way and the importance of eating that way?
Yes, what suits our bodies. Everybody's body is different. We're also unique. Food is so complex, and food is such a sensitive subject. So there's no one fits all. But I will say this, is that it's really important not to demonize ultra-processed foods. It's a ginormous category. Our bodies may not know what to do with all of them, but they are all really different. But our bodies certainly know what to do with the food that we've been eating for ages. So, the way that we first started cooking around a fire, that was the first time we sat around a fire together. We were cooking meat, our jaws developed, we started cooking and processing our vegetables and all of that stuff, right? We all know that this is a way that suits us. And yeah, it would be amazing if we could go back to more of that. And I was laughing the other day with a friend. I grew up in Kingston. We had a huge, like the best Korean restaurants and shops. We would eat kimchi on everything. Cabbage, one of the cheapest ingredients out there, is the main ingredient in sauerkraut and kimchi and salt and water. Such incredible age-old foods, fermented foods that are now back in fashion, with my fingers doing that bunny thing. And they're back again. And everyone's like, oh, that's really good for my gut. But yeah, eating closer to nature. And I think also remembering that when we cook our food, it's not just about knowing what goes into our food. It is about the whole act of how our body responds to the food. So when we chop the onion or chop the vegetable, our senses are engaged on, we're smelling it, we're tasting it, our digestive juices go. That's the first start, our saliva. Even now I'm thinking about like cooking and I'm like,
so am I.
Right? And so that's the beginning of the digestion process. With all the healthy food in the world, if you're going to eat it stressed and barely chew it, that's probably not going to be great for us either.
And there's also the element of sitting around a table all together. We need the social connection, don't we?
Yeah, like the sitting around the fire. And easier said than done. I'm trying really hard to sit with my baby and eat. And she eats dinner at 5 o'clock, which actually is my dream. And I'm always like, someone's like, let's have a meeting at 5. I'm like, really? That's like my perfect time to eat dinner because I love going to bed early.
This episode is sponsored by Ancient and Brave. I've generally used Ancient and Brave Wild Collagen for a few years. I believe it's keeping me strong and helping my skin to glow. Ancient and Brave's products are pure, potent, and easy to take. They're functional drinks and supplements to elevate your wellness naturally. From helping relieve menopausal symptoms to supercharging your energy. And what really sets them apart is their sustainability. They are B Corp certified, as well as a member of 1% for the Planet. This means donating 1% of all sales to environmental causes that protect the planet. Because collective action all adds up. So by buying their products, it means you're supporting the planet too. Visit 1%fortheplanet.org to learn more and head to ancientandbrave.earth to shop their amazing products. This episode is also sponsored by Lingo, your personal metabolic coach. I've been using Lingo, the new glucose biosensor and app made by Abbott, for a few months now, and I have found it completely fascinating. As a journalist, I know full well that the health and wellbeing landscape can be really overwhelming. There's so much confusing and conflicting information out there, and we can feel lost trying to make the right decisions. What's right for you might not be what's right for me. So Lingo helps to take away this confusion. It monitors your glucose levels in real time, so you can see how your body uniquely responds to food, exercise, stress, lifestyle habits, and more. It's an incredible insight into what's happening in our bodies and how we can adapt our life and diet rather than just blindly following generalised health advice. Remember the name, Lingo. Your body has the answers. Visit hellolingo.com to learn more. And please note, Lingo is not for medical use, 18 plus only. So should I tell you some things that I love about your book? I would
love to hear it.
Okay, so I love the fact that the ingredients are very accessible. Because I think a lot of people think that with healthy food, that a lot of the ingredients are difficult to find. And I think that myth is slightly being busted now. For years, I think
so.
When this whole kind of well-being world went boom, there were a lot of ingredients that people just couldn't buy in the local Sainsbury's. And you use quite normal ingredients. There's a working lunches section, which I can very much relate to because I'm often at home on my laptop and then I think, what the hell am I going to eat for lunch?
Yeah.
I love that.
Just because we're at home doesn't mean that we
section.
are sorting ourselves out, or maybe we're working even more through that lunch break. I'm saying lunch break as if many of us even have the option for a lunch break, which is crazy that we don't.
Exactly. Then there's one thing I love, which is a jarred salad, which you've called a jalad.
Oh yeah, can't take that credit. I credit but no, she called it the jalad. I've been making those salad jars for years, but she called it a jalad. And I was like, you are an absolute genius, because can't.
Who did? Sorry.
Alice, this amazing chef called Alice in Frame, she is on Instagram. Okay. And she calls it a jalad because it's a salad in a jar. But I remember Jazz and I used to prep these salads in jars before, any old jar, any old container. You can do it in your bog standard rectangle container, and you just layer up, but it works in a jar. Whatever you want, you have your dressing at the bottom so things don't go soggy on top. We don't want soggy on top, salad dressing, maybe some quinoa, rice, pasta, chickpeas, and then you layer up maybe some feta, maybe some boiled egg, and your more delicate stuff at the top so they don't get crushed. And then you just turn it out onto your plate. There's your thing. And I remember getting a copy of one of Gwyneth Paltrow's earliest books back in the early Goop days. And I opened it up and there was this double-page spread of all the different salads, because obviously you can flavour them up different ways. You go Mediterranean vibes. I did one with miso. And she had them and I was like, oh my God, Gwyneth's done it too. And then I read it and it said, shout out to the Hemsley sisters in the UK who I saw made these salads. And obviously, at the time, I was like, oh my gosh, thanks, Gwyneth.
That's amazing.
But yeah, so they are brilliant. And you meal prep them. And like I was saying, by meal prep, I feel like the idea of meal prepping has become this boring, same old, maybe like a boring boiled chicken breast with a boring bit of sweet potato and like no love and care. And people put it into these Tupperwares and they stack them up and it's like, eat the same thing for 10 days.
I think that's come from the fitness influencer, isn't it? You see sort of like these images on Instagram of people just eating very bland, but very, very nutritionally dense.
Protein led.
Yeah.
And I love the idea. And I don't want to talk anyone down because there is so much to be picked up on. This is just tons of ideas, pick and choose, pick and mix what works for you and suits you. So yeah, I love the idea of making batches up of 3 grab and go breakfast jars, or these jalad jars, or making my tray bake for dinner tonight. And I make 2 trays because I've got two rows in my oven, and the tray I don't touch or try and not touch will roll over and be my lunch or dinner tomorrow.
Amazing.
And I'll zhuzh it up. Maybe I'll put some avocado on top or something else on top, bring it to life. And did you see in the book the bits called like how to build a salad?
And how to build a sandwich.
How to build a sandwich.
I love that because the sandwich has been vilified, hasn't it? I think people are a little bit scared of eating sandwiches these days because maybe that's probably the wellbeing world, which is anti-bread.
Anti-bread, but also, my God, when did all the high street sandwiches stop putting anything in the middle? Like, give me a deep filled sandwich any day. So it's about making, a sandwich really is a chance to eat something delicious. smushed together that you can eat with one hand. So it's all about what's inside. Having said that, of course, it is also about the bread, because we know that one of the foods we consume the most that are making up our high ultra processed numbers is supermarket bread, which not all supermarket bread is the same. We know you go into any shop, you can see like 100 different breads in there, I'm sure, from the fresh bakery bit to the packaged up bit to the gluten-free section. But if you're not sure where your bread's at, turn over the packet. You should only see really 5-6 ingredients. And then you've got a good bread. And most breads that are good, you will not feel the need to eat the whole loaf. Do you know the loaves that I mean? Where just
I know.
They are absolutely addictive, and you're like, eat. I'm going to eat. It's the heavier breads that if someone threw one at you, probably would make you go, ow, a bit. Those nutrient-dense breads.
Do you make your own bread?
Susanna, funny you should say that. But I just posted a bread recipe, and I say in it, I didn't include this bread in the book because it didn't surpass my checkpoint requirements. So it had to be super easy and really short. So making your own bread is not super easy and really short.
Okay.
It's short in terms of hands-on time, but it does take a while. So I didn't put it in the book, but it's on my Instagram if anyone would like to give it a go. Okay. And what I tend to do is I make it once a month. I make 2 loaves and I slice up 1 loaf, chuck it in the freezer. But I also, I live in London. There is good bread around me.
How do we make it a bit easier for people to get their produce? Because I think probably one of the biggest things that's stopping people from eating healthier is lack of time, and lack of time to go and find the ingredients.
I know. I
think it's lack of time in the kitchen, and also lack of time of going out to the local, greengrocers or whatever. Yeah.
And I've sort of said it myself. We've barely got time to do the shopping, let alone analysing each packet. I'm really aware of that. So I would suggest one of the things you could do is pick an area of your life, whether it's the breakfast, maybe it's the confectionery, maybe it's the bread, because maybe you're a family that like to eat bread quite often. And so maybe you go, right, this is my monthly like positive upgrade or positive swap in mine and my family's life. Let's find a bread that we trust and we all like, because otherwise what's the point in buying a bread with minimal ingredients that no one's going to eat? That's just wasteful and it's going to drive you all mad. And that's what we focus our research time on this time. Or you could just say to yourself, do you know what, I don't feel I eat that many ultra processed foods, but you know what, I'm glad I know what to look out for the next time that I'm shopping. Or maybe it's that you feel you would benefit from not focusing on reducing your ultra processed foods. Maybe you'd rather think, I'm going to up my whole foods, and then naturally you'll eat less ultra processed foods.
Yeah,
I feel like
you crowd them out.
You crowd them out, and I feel like everybody will work out their own way of doing it. I personally focus on upping my brain foods and upping my rainbow, and a bit like you were just mentioning your fridge and cupboard. I've got little shopping lists in the book, split into fridge, freezer, cupboard, and maybe there's like 5 to 10 in each. And no one's suggesting you go out and overhaul it all, and definitely use what you've got already. But these are the things that you can really rely on. So I often buy frozen green veg, like frozen spinach, because I feel that it's more affordable. It stops going off, because these leafy greens go off fast. I try and come up with a lot of without thinking tips and suggestions. Without thinking, I can grab a handful from the freezer and it dissolves and defrosts in whatever I'm cooking, whether it's a pasta sauce or whatnot.
You could even chuck that in a bolognese or something, couldn't you?
Absolutely. There isn't much I wouldn't chuck in a bolognese, Susanna.
Yeah. Your book, actually, just thinking of bolognese, your book, it doesn't include meat, does it?
It does. It does include meat, but that's interesting.
It includes fish.
It includes meat and it includes fish, but you got the right impression, because obviously I haven't given you a full-on printed, your own special copy, signed, sealed, and delivered.
I've just seen a PDF.
You've just seen a PDF. You would get the impression it's mainly veg, because it is mainly veg, because that is how I eat. I'm an omnivore, but I mainly eat my veggies, my legumes, and my whole grains, and I eat small amounts of meat and fish. And I also feel
I'm the same.
Yeah, I also feel that people that eat meat and fish or animal products, they know what to do with them. It's the rest of the plate that they could do with help for. So I try and focus on ways to deliver vegetable and lentil and chickpea recipes that you might go, oh, probably should eat a vegetable today, as we all do. And that's what I'm trying to come up with solutions for. I feel like chicken and everything else, like everybody sort of knows how they like their chicken to be.
Yeah. And the rest just brings life to it all.
And the rest brings life to it. So the herbs, the spices, the seeds, the nuts.
Mm.
And I was chatting to my friend about this the other day, and she was saying nuts are so expensive. And I'm like, yeah, nuts are really expensive. But you know what? Seeds are amazing. And seeds are definitely not as expensive as nuts. So if you're feeling like your nut budget needs some help, you definitely buy your pumpkin seeds, sesame seeds, sunflower seeds especially, much more affordable, and chop and change them in my recipes. And as always, much to my editor's distress, I'm always like, you could swap this for this. They're like, stop giving people options, the page is too full. And I'm like, I can't help it, that's my mother. If you haven't got this, do this. She's very like that.
But something has to happen, doesn't it? Because I think that the government need to get on board with the whole ultra processed food situation. Like,
God, yes.
When I go to the garage or a service station, I then go inside and I often look around and I just think I cannot find anything to eat if I don't want to eat some like highly processed chocolate bar or something.
Yeah.
And something's got to happen. My biggest thought is that children need to be educated better in schools.
Yes.
The education around food in schools is so dated. And
I don't think I got any.
No, I mean, you're basically told sort of what. Actually, I don't even know what you're told. My kids definitely haven't come home and told me anything interesting about food. I think you're told about how to chew and things like that.
Oh, well, that's better than nothing. You're right. But no, gosh, we eat 3 meals a day if we're lucky. We know, teachers know this all too well. I mean, I know this from working on the free school meals campaigns, is that if children aren't eating a nourishing breakfast or a nourishing lunch, how are they? They're not going to concentrate. They're not going to learn. And it also affects their behavior and disrupts classrooms and frustrates teachers, which means that they then can't look after the classroom. It all feeds literally into one thing. So definitely kids need to be taught, teachers need to be supported. The only way that that's going to work is if government get involved. And the only way the whole food system is going to be more equal, because it is completely unequal at the moment, is if the government get involved and put food at the top of the priority list, because it informs all public health, NHS, the obesity crisis, the mental health crisis, education, everything. But maybe that's a conversation for another day. But yeah, the food system needs to be more equal. We need more food education, particularly with the young. And those of us, I think, that are in a privileged position, of which we are, we're here being able to talk about food. We eat food 3 times a day. We should definitely use our spending power to vote for the kind of food world we want. So where we can, supporting organic, especially when it comes, I think, to animal and wild and sustainably sourced, when it comes to fish, and supporting British farmers and, all the things we know. Like, where we can, it would be good if we did vote with our spending power.
Yeah, and I think we as human beings also need to prioritise food, because we all say we haven't got time to cook food, we haven't got time to go to the supermarket, we haven't got the time to read the back of a label. But actually, we're all getting so sick as human beings, we have to start making time for it, don't we?
Yeah, it informs so much. And we do have all of these crises in the name of health. And then we look at the figures and we go, oh, we're eating more and more ultra-processed foods. We're getting further and further away from how we used to eat. We're going further and further away from food we don't recognise. We're cooking less. We're eating less vegetables. Is there a correlation? Yes, I think there probably is. Well, we know there is. So with that said, we have got to do the groundwork ourselves. And I totally agree with you. It is going to cost us more time. It may cost us more money. We know that some ultra-processed foods, or some, let's say, industrially produced foods, they are expensive overall. And we can't just sit there and go, let's all just eat legumes and brown rice because they're cheaper. I'm not in any way saying my book is the be all and end all, but I've tried my very best. Thought to myself, as a almost 40-something person, working mum, how I eat, how I make it work for me, how I try and make this way of cooking as convenient as the convenience foods. So I hope you'll, give the recipes a go. If you're not, there's loads of books out there. Again, my publisher's going to kill me, but you don't have to buy a cookbook. Just have a little look at my Instagram as well, or any of the tips we've given throughout the podcast, like how to build or what you could incorporate, just think more beans, more legumes, maybe a bit less of this and a bit more of that.
Well, Melissa, thank you so much for joining me.
I've had a blast. I love your podcast. Thank you very much for having me on.
Well, it's an absolute pleasure, and hopefully we can catch up again sometime soon. But I've got one last question that I wanted to ask you, that I'm asking all the guests, and that is, when do you feel you're most human?
I love this. I feel my most human, something that I'm going to do just after this, because we've been on our screens for a little bit. As much as I've enjoyed it, I'm feeling stimulated and like screened out. I'm going to go grab my dog, grab my baby, and we're going to walk out. The sun is out. We're going to walk into our nearest park. I always am like, I'm going to take off my shoes and ground myself. Sometimes I don't because there's dog poo everywhere. But just being outside, being a little bit away from London traffic, being in some nature, that just makes me feel amazing. And then we come home and we go into the fridge and we pull out something to eat, ideally a leftover, so we don't have to think too much, and we sit and eat it. And just that for me is joy and feeling human, like being with people I love and having had some like dose of sun.
Sounds amazing. I'd like to be there too.
You are very much invited. Thank you, lovely.
Melissa, thank you.
Bye-bye.
After chatting to Melissa, here are my takeaways. We need to get back to eating as close to nature as possible. This is food our bodies understand. We need to get back to cooking from scratch. Worryingly, in the UK, we have the highest consumption of ultra-processed foods in Europe. Melissa recommends swapping out ultra-processed regulars in your diet for healthier alternatives, or upping the amount of whole foods in your diet to crowd out the ultra-processed ones. To make cooking from scratch easier, Melissa says we do need to plan meals and shopping. She's also keen on making your freezer your friend. And don't fear frozen veg. Stock up so you always have it at hand. Melissa has a brilliant acronym to always remember when shopping for food. Remember, brain foods. B is for beans, R is for rainbow veg, A is for antioxidants, I is for includes protein, N is for nuts and seeds, F is for fermented foods, O is for omega-3s, the second O is for oils, and D is for dairy, or the full fat equivalent. Finally, Melissa and I spoke about the vital need for more education at school. Our children need to grow up understanding the positive impact that healthy whole foods have on our brains and bodies, and the detrimental effects that UPFs have. And isn't cooking one of the most important skills we could ever learn? And that's it for today. Look out for the next podcast. And in the meantime, stay human.